Welcome to the Fukit podcast, where Fukit means setting the fears aside and having the courage to embrace who we truly are.
On this podcast, we're going to dive deep with you into the juiciest and most transformative aspects of life, and hope they will offer valuable insights and practical tools to support your well-being and growth.
We're here to remind you that you're not alone on this adventure called life. So grab a seat. Fuck it. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Fukit podcast, the English version.
Yeah!
So today I'm super excited to bring up this topic because it's a topic that we've been wanting to talk about in public for a really long time, and it never felt like the right time to do it. And even now it doesn't feel like the right time to do it, but somehow it does. So I really hope that the last episode was kind of a good intro to who we are, the way we communicate and connect with others. And this topic is one that is close to our heart, especially knowing that many people who will listen to it are part of our lives. And being part of our lives means that they also get to see and be exposed to everything we go through in our relationship, which I think is a beautiful, supportive system that we have in our lives. So
what's the topic?
So this topic is our relationship. We've mentioned before that we've been together for 13 years. And I feel like our relationship evolved so much. And the reason why we chose this topic for this chapter is because we have so many people that came to us for advice on relationships and conscious communication and consciously relating to each other, which is something that has become like a buzzword. But I don't know how many people really understand what it means to consciously relate. And I want to bring in different things that helped us and things we've learned from our relationship that might be useful for other people.
Okay, amazing. So I have two questions for you. A, what does that mean, consciously relating? And B, why did we not speak about this for so long? You said there were reasons that we didn't speak about. Why was there fear to speak about our relationship? And also we did speak about our relationship in the previous Hebrew podcast a bit. So yeah, start with either one.
So I think that consciously relating for me, is how I treat this relationship. I think that there is an assumption that while you're in a relationship, there are certain assumptions about how a relationship is functioning and what is the structure of that relationship. And that has been true for me for many, many years, until a few years ago when we started having this discussions about our relationship, the way we relate to each other, and the way we define and explore parts of our relationship. And to be more specific, we were starting to bring to the table this discussion of monogamy versus non-monogamy. And this was a huge topic in our life because just to talk about this subject at the time seemed like the most scary thing that could have ever happened to me. Living a life that until that point was so obvious, and the way I saw relationships was just a one-way direction of how we can be in a relationship. So when this topic came, it was so overwhelming and so mind-blowing that sharing this in public was impossible. It was just like too much to handle. And it shook me so much that it took me a lot of time to process it and unpack it. And I think it's a really interesting topic, even for people that are monogamous. it doesn't mean that if you're consciously relating, you have to be non-monogamous. But I think that the fact that you're questioning a structure or the ways in which you relate to others, and specifically in a romantic partnership, I think is super interesting. And I've learned so much in this process that I feel like sharing that and sharing our process could be super interesting for people. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you weren't talking about our relationship in general. You were specifically talking around the topic of open relating, non-monogamy, because sharing about our relationship in general, that we were together for 13 years and we're married, that even our sexuality you had no problem sharing. So it's more around this specific
this
topic.
was a specific topic that was not allowing me to share everything about our relationship. And I think that our relationship is much more than just this topic, but I think just putting it out there is something that is part of the conversation, and I can't kind of separate it from the way we evolved as a couple. But definitely I don't define our relationship by it. I think there are so many things to say about our relationship, but for sure we can say that we learned so much about relating to each other in the past 13 years, and the way our partner today is so different than the way we started 13, 14, 15 years ago when we just started connecting. And I feel like we learned so much about it, and I think it's such a huge topic that can really break into different topics on communication and sexuality and expectations and choices and so many things. But I think to connect it to the previous episode, I think that we've made some very brave and radical choices in our relationship that I think sharing about what we did and the processes we've been through can be, for the very least, interesting and hopefully also useful for a lot of couples. Because when we were sharing about our sexuality and the challenges we had as a long-term relationship, and how to maintain a healthy sexuality. That was a topic that brought so much conversation to friends and people who were listening to it. So I'm offering this opportunity for us to share what we've learned so far and just kind of dive to wherever it takes us.
Yeah. So... And I guess it's important to say that we don't have a clear definition of where our relationship stands. It continues to evolve. Non-monogamy / open relationship is a very general term, and I don't think that this is the time to start diving deep into what the different ways are specifically. But just to say that any step towards thinking differently within a relationship for us was open relating. Even if for 2 years we didn't act on our desires, but we just spoke about other options which were different than strictly monogamous relationship, I consider that as already an open relationship, because we allowed, like I said, conversations, ideas that were not allowed or are not allowed when you're living a strictly monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
And that was huge. That was very big. That was bringing a lot of air and new wind into our relationship.
Yeah. And I do want to say that it's funny that somehow in English I feel so much more comfortable to talk about it. Because maybe in the past 4 years, mainly the conversations around it were in English somehow with our friends. But also there was something about where we're coming from that for me, being in Israel, felt always kind of more restricted for me personally. So this topic was super challenging to share publicly because I was so fearful of being judged, first of all. And secondly, I was scared that once we talk about it publicly, I will become the spokesperson of open relating. And it's important for me to say it and also put a boundary around it, that me sharing my personal experience doesn't mean that I want to encourage people or do I want to represent this kind of lifestyle. It's just sharing my own experience. And I also am not interested necessarily to hear opinions about this choice. I am open to questions if you're curious, but especially in Israel, there is a tendency that when you share something personal that is a bit, let's call it controversial and taboo, you can get a lot of opinions and talkback. And while I appreciate this kind of like direct and open style of communication, I also want to take care of myself and say, hey, I have a boundary around it, and it does hurt me when people just make assumptions and judgments about me because they hear a certain word and they associate it with certain things. So yeah, it's like I'm willing to share my experience, and at the same time I'm going to say I'm not open to hear what you think about it. I'm open to questions around it.
Mm-hmm. Just about that, and that's the thing with, it's beautiful that you're expressing boundaries, and I know how hard it's been over the years to do such a thing, and for me as well, and so that's beautiful. But that's the thing with boundaries, that we can express a boundary and there's a fear of expressing it because someone might not agree with it or might not listen to it, might not respect that. And us coming out publicly and speaking about whatever it is that we're going to be speaking specifically about this, people might react. And we need to be open to that. People might not respect your boundary and they might react, but it's also a lesson for us to remember where they might be coming from and to hear that. But I would also invite anyone who does feel the need to react to stop for a moment before that and just notice what's happening inside. Where is the reaction coming from? Is it coming from a clear, like, I disagree, this is horrible, or is there maybe something underneath that? Is there a fear? Is there something, like, it could be a fear like, hey, wait a second, I live a specific lifestyle, and when they're living a different lifestyle, this is me'ayem.
Threatening.
This is threatening to my lifestyle, so I must attack. It might just be fearful because, whoa, I also have thoughts like this, but I'm so afraid to express this to anyone around me, to my family, to my spouse, to my partner. So I must defend my lifestyle or come out against it. And then there also might be serious doubts and questions about this lifestyle. And that specifically can lead to all of them can lead to healthy conversation, but it all depends on how we communicate that. So if we're talking about also conscious relating or conscious communicating, it's being conscious about what we're saying. It's being conscious to where we're acting from. So it could be saying like, hey, wow, that seems so scary. Or wow, I would be so frightened to do that. How did you overcome this and this and this? Or this upsets me because this and this and this. This meets me in a certain place. Or, but coming and saying, oh, you guys are horrible, and just pointing fingers. And this is something that I feel that I've done and I probably still do as a human being. And we do so much as humans, especially now that we have social media. So there's like this kind of it's not face to face, so it's easier to just lash out at people and speak our minds, and we're not noticing how hurtful or how painful it could be to the other side. And so it's an invitation to slow down before we react and before we say hurtful things, and try and really listen and see the other person and understand that when we're, like we said, we keep saying we're sharing our lifestyle. It is our lifestyle, and if it's good for us, then that's amazing. Maybe in a few years we'll realize it's not good for us, but in no way are we saying you need to live your lifestyle. This is going back to the thing we said in the previous episode about just putting a question mark. Like, hey, I'm living a monogamous lifestyle. I'm living this in this way. Put a question mark on that. Am I truly happy? Is this really how I want to be living? Amazing. I want to stay living this way, but that's so beautiful that there are other ways to live, and that opens my mind to other ideas and other ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, so many things to say around it, but I think the last thing you said about us changing all the time, this is the most important thing to remember about everything we share, that we constantly change and evolve. So something that works for us now, our lifestyle in general, can change all the time. And giving permission to each other to change and not hold on to something that someone said or did is also really liberating, because it's just like, hey, now it works for me, I'm doing it. It doesn't work anymore, I'm not doing it anymore. I think that before, the perfectionist in me was trying to make up her mind on whether I am this or that. And if I'm this or that, there is no permission to move from one thing to another. It was a very like
there's no spectrum. It's very
black and white
dichotomy.
Yeah, so I think it's related to other topics, but specifically around that, and this is already diving into my personal journey. I was having so much inner conflicts around this topic because I kept driving myself crazy. Am I monogamous or non-monogamous? And all the time I was trying to define things, which is sometimes important, but at the same time it was just creating a lot of pain for me because I couldn't decide. And the more I was trying to decide, the more I suffered. And when I realized there's like a spectrum in life in general, and specifically around lifestyle of monogamy versus non-monogamy, it gave me a lot of relief and flexibility to shift and say, hey, this is my mood today, this is what I need today, and tomorrow I need this. And the more we realize that our needs change all the time, the more expanded we become in our life experience, because we can have an opinion one day on something, and then we start to realize like, hey, I'm not necessarily connected to this idea anymore, and I'm starting to feel more like this, and it becomes more softer and easier to navigate changes and desires and moods and needs and situations.
I want to ask you and maybe dive into and respecting your boundaries around how much we share, but into more the juiciness of this, right? We've been speaking a bit more about the details, and especially coming from you. For I think we were fighting a lot. Like, we had so many arguments, and it was really hard and real struggle. And there were moments where we thought we won't be able to make it. Like, we're just too different. But just kind of bringing it back to the beginning and how it started, where it even came from, and hearing you now and how you were 4 or 5 years ago when we just started talking about it, the amount of crying, the amount of I don't want to talk about this topic, the amount of resistance and frustration that the both of us have from. So kind of going back to the beginning, where it even came from, why it even came into our lives. Like, if we were living a happy relationship lifestyle, like, why even bother?
Yeah, it's really important to stop, maybe slow down, and say it. We talk about it so easily now, but it was, I think, one of the most challenging and challenging mentally and physically and emotionally things to go through, but also the most growth I've experienced in my life through this experience. So I just want to kind of like stop for a minute and acknowledge that, and acknowledge the growth and that came with this painful process. And I'm smiling now, but like you said, there was a lot of tears and a lot of fear that came to me through this process, but I'm so grateful for it now. And
I wish I could go back to that 31-year-old Anna and show her this, because I think at the time I was believing that this could lead us to these places, and I remember you kind of like unable to see the broader spectrum, and
I was
It's
I was
really,
always able to see it, but I had to make the choice to choose this path. And when you feel like you don't have a choice, that's where things start to get really hard. When you think that there is no other option. And many times in this process of opening, I call it, our relationship, because this is how I can describe this process. Many times I felt like I have no choice, and this is where I really look back and understand how a perception changes everything, and choices. And I had to make a few very big choices in the process in order to be where I am today. And I say that because before I dive into my personal story, I want to say to people who are thinking about it or fantasizing about it, because in my mind, we were together for such a long time. I love you. I care about you. I see you as my life partner for the rest of my life. But then I had a part of me that was starting to feel like this questions coming in, especially around my sexuality, of like, oh, is this it for me? Is this like the end of my experiences and exploration that I was still looking for? And because also I think the fact that we were together from a very young age, when we started getting closer to our 30s, I really started to wake up my awareness to my sexuality and understanding that there is much, much more to understand, explore with you. And that was my thought. But there was this little thought inside of me of like, what if? Because I started hearing this thing about non-monogamy. At first I thought it was like lunatics and like hippies, extreme hippies that have this lifestyle. And I was like, okay, that's not us. We're living in Tel Aviv and everything. But I just say to people when this topic comes up, I'm like, it's not, if you think that opening your relationship is going to solve your sexuality or your boredom or your excitement or all the fantasies that you think you're going to now, how you say?
fix.
Not fix, like make. I think that this journey of ours, it's like 90% self and inner work and 10% fun, I would call it. The fun comes as well, and it's beautiful, but it's a lot of deconditioning and inner work. And I think the way I talk about it today and the process I see in general in my life as a human is thanks to a lot of things I experienced in our relationship. So when we look at our journey as a couple, it's almost like we spend maybe like 8 or 9 years building something together, two individuals coming together and learning how to become something, a new entity almost, that comes with two people that brings different personalities, needs. And then this was the process of becoming more individuals in the relationship, I feel, and becoming like less dependent of each other. And that was a huge process for me. So today I can look back and say, wow, I learned how to take care of myself much, much better than what I used to before. I know how to communicate better my needs and separate between things. And that's a huge gift that I received from this process. And I feel so much more centered and self-sustained. So when I relate with you today, I'm coming from a completely different place. The expectations are different. The way I perceive you is different. The way I perceive us. So many things changed. Not only thanks to the experience we had in exploring this topic of non-monogamy, but also just in general how we evolved as two people in a constant relationship that didn't break. So yeah, it was a big intro, but this is kind of something I wanted to share.
It's beautiful hearing you and speak about it this way, and God only knows I wanted to record us back then when we were in the thick of it, in the struggle, and we still have, but it's kind of like you shared in the previous episode. It's the tools we have, and it's understanding that there will be struggles, but how we deal with the struggles and how we deal with the conflict between us and how we come together and speak about it is very different than what it was 4 years ago. And the energies that we're bringing into this topic with each other is very different. So it's beautiful to hear you speak and see how you've evolved, and both evolved in this sense.
Both of us,
we both so much, and just hearing you speak, it's funny because it reminded me that really you were the one who brought this years ago, even before I spoke about it. You came home one day and asked me if I've heard of this concept, non-monogamy, and you shared a bit about it, and I was like, what the fuck, no way. And I was like in my job and everything, and no distractions. And over time, I learned that it was coming because there was something happening in your personal life that I had no idea about, and it wasn't coming just from an article that you read, and I had forgotten about it. And when I brought it up a few years later, then it felt like it was only me who wanted it. But I guess deep down I knew that it was something that you were interested in, and even though there was a lot of resistance coming from you, a lot of fear, I knew that it was something that was a mutual want and desire from both of us. You were just more, I guess, scared to meet those places, if I say correctly. But so if you want to share more about that, more about how it started.
I also want to add something about relationships in general, that when you think about people who get into a relationship with someone else, and the willingness to grow inside a relationship and stick with it when it gets tough and when it gets really uncomfortable, this is where you really get a chance to grow. It doesn't necessarily mean that this relationship will last forever, but I feel like the one thing that really we received from being together for such a long time is the way we each personally grew through the struggles and staying with it, and not like being like, okay, fuck it, I give up and I let go. And so many people face challenges in the relationship and they feel like, oh my God, we're not meant for each other. It's not meant to be together. We're not meant for that. And I feel like there's so much expansion when we actually stay and we try to really navigate what is going on. And this is like the depth of any conflict in a relationship, where we understand that we are getting triggered and something is bothering us, and we get to share that with the other person, and being on one hand held in a situation, and on the other start to shift within ourselves. And I think this is something that we really learn how to do, and that's a great gift that we gave to each other in a relationship.
Yeah, it's very true, but I do think that there's a part missing, that we had kind of like it's not a cheat code, but basically what held us many times from my side together was because very short about our relationship. This could be for another episode, but we were together for 7 months and then we broke up for 1 year. And the way it happened, again, in short, was that I broke up kind of very instantaneously and in a very hurtful way, and you just got up and left. And I realized, I think it was already the next day, that I made the biggest mistake of my life, and I felt so much pain. And you wanted nothing to do with me, and it took me a year to get you back. And the reason I'm sharing this is because there were so many instances throughout our relationship that I was like, holy shit, like, get the fuck out of my life. Like, I want to just toss you out the window. Like,
I feel
oh
the
my
same,
God.
okay?
Oh my God, I can't believe we're together. This is not going to work. This is never going to work. Da, da, da. And it feels so real in those moments because it's just the anger, the rage, the confusion, the sexual desire for someone else, the whatever it is so strong. So it's blinding. And it seems like that is the only reality in that given moment. But feeling that pain really early in our relationship was a big reminder. And then I had this pact with myself, and I said, like, bite your lips. If in 2 weeks you still feel the same way, let her go. But if you don't, then stay. And it really, within a day or two, or even a few hours, it would subside. And it kind of like connects to what you said, because I was giving myself that choice. Like, I have a choice. I can. It's not like I'm bind to you forever. And this was like, we were together for 7 years before we got married. So this has nothing to do with like a contract or wedding. But it's just that feeling that I have the freedom to get up and leave whenever I want. But I know that right now I might not be making the clearest decision out of the clearest mind.
Yeah.
And so that really helped. And then obviously over time, once we were able to overcome those moments, and I think that at the beginning we communicated horribly. We did not know how to communicate, but we always tried to communicate, whether it was through outbursts or whether it was, I saw that you're closing up and I would poke at you until you would express what you're doing, or you would do the same to me. And over time we learned how to communicate better and better, and kind of, if at some points we would have a fight and then we wouldn't speak for 3-4 days, then it's okay throughout the actual argument to kind of diffuse it and understand. So yeah, we got sidetracked a bit, but it's important.
No, it's not. I think it's a very important foundation to what we're sharing, because it's part of our relationship and how we evolved to who we are today. And I feel like sometimes people think of non-monogamy as like, oh my God, it's so radical and you just like don't give a fuck about anything, you just do what you want. But when you really understand the process that it takes, and also what happened to us personally to come to this lifestyle, it's showing like the depth of it, and not just like a concept that people see out there or read in a magazine or see a documentary about. So I feel like to share this is really valuable. And
I really feel that it's like I don't know if to call it a symptom of our relationship. It's not like it was the next step. It's building off of many things in a relationship. It's just like, I don't know, some people have a child or something and or get married, or so this was something, and it doesn't define our relationship. Sometimes we choose to define our relationship by saying that we're in an open relationship or whatever, but it definitely doesn't define, like, the essence of our relationship is built upon our communication, around our connection, around our love, around everything that we've been through, all the beautiful moments, the hardships. It's this. I view our relationship sometimes as a child and now it's like an adolescent that we're kind of constantly growing and nourishing and learning. So yeah.
So it's just to say it's part of, it's not the thing.
Yeah.
But it is part of, and just being free to share that publicly is just another step towards accepting ourselves, another step towards like liberation of like the authentic expression of who we are. Because I felt so many times that, oh my God, I wish I could write a post about it on social media, and I'm not daring to because I'm so scared of reaction. So being able to do that now is huge for me and for us, and I'm super grateful that I'm ready, like literally
coming
ready.
Out of the closet.
Yeah, and it is coming out of the closet. And I remember looking at our gay friends and thinking, wow, they're much freer because they've been through the process of being hiding a part of themselves and then deciding like I accept who I am and I'm out there being me, and if you like me, you like me, and if you don't, that's okay. And that's part of, I think, my personal recovery process of pleasing people, of always wanting to be loved by everyone and accepted by everyone, and being like, no, I mean, I want people I care about to understand me better, but if they don't, it's also okay, and I will do my best to keep the love even if I don't get the same love I would like to receive from people around me. And that's something huge for me, because before I would get just so fucking scared of sharing things that are real for me of the fear of being rejected. So just being able to do that now is just so wonderful and precious, and I'm very, very happy about it. And I'm also happy to share our journey with others again, because so many times when we sat with people and shared, people were feeling like they can reveal a part of themselves that maybe they had shame around or guilt. So connecting all of this topic together, I want to put it on the table, something that is very natural and human. And it is to have a thought about someone else while you're in a relationship. I remember myself having a thought, or God forbid, an attraction for someone else. I would literally feel like I'm cheating. And that thing caused a lot of closure in my sexuality, because it made me feel like my sexuality is not safe. It's risking my relationship, which is something that was so important for me. So by not accepting that part of myself, I was just like literally like pushing my like desire. How do you say, not just desire, like really repressing my sexuality, because I was so fearful that I will jeopardize a relationship, and I didn't feel like it was something safe to bring as a topic, not even to do something about it. And I feel like being able to just have this discussion makes you feel closer, because I feel like the more we feel like we have space to be ourselves in our relationship, like to bring out different sides of ourselves to the relationship, the more close we feel. And I feel like in that process that we experienced, we both kind of were fighting for our ability to bring parts of ourselves to the table of our relationship. You are holding the flag of your freedom, and you wanted to bring that side of you to the relationship and say, hey, I have desires. I want to be accepted for those desires, and you felt rejected from me from not allowing you to bring this topic. And this was a huge struggle, because it became like a huge fight between us when you were fighting for freedom and I was fighting for stability and security. And it was kind of like, again, this black or white, like we can't have both. And in my mind, the possibility of you exploring your freedom was like risking everything and jeopardizing everything we've built together. And I just couldn't get it, despite the fact that inside of me was a desire to explore myself. There was so much fear, so much threatening just from talking about it, that I would get like a lion. And it took a lot from both of us to come to a place where we can bridge that and give each other what we need. And the more we started to actually see each other, the more we were able to open up. I feel like in this process, I was learning to slowly give more space to hearing what you're actually needing from me. And I felt like finally, slowly, after like fighting for your freedom so much, you were able to give space to my need for safety and slowness and taking time for things. And once we started to meet each other, we started to build a stronger foundation for exploration. And I think that's a really important aspect to bring when people are considering this lifestyle. It's how we can build a foundation with each other of safety so that our nervous system can start to expand, because the conditioning around how a relationship looks like is so strong that when we start to like touch on these areas, it's so scary at the beginning that we need to find a way to like stabilize the nervous system. And I think we did it like in a very like boom, very big shocks, very big releases that afterwards it took us a long time to recover and build safety again, to a point to where I actually thought that we're not going to make it, to a point where we had to go to therapy to address some issues because I felt like we're not heading to the same direction. So I'm sitting here after like 5 years of process, being able to reflect back and say, hey, what did I learn from this process? What did I learn about myself, about a relationship that I can offer now as an advice to people, as my lessons that I learned about myself and life from the process we are having in our relationship.
Yeah. I have two things that I wanted to share that came to mind. One is to notice the parts within ourselves and bring it here. Like, first of all, something that I learned and I want to give thanks to myself is patience. So it's also like I was ready to speak about this on the podcast 3 years ago, and it was not easy for me to restrain. I felt like I'm restraining myself, but at the same time, this is something that I needed to learn within our relationship, patience. And restrain sounds negative. So, but again, out of choice, out of like, I am choosing you and seeing that right now, my need for freedom is overpowering your need for security, and security needs to be there, and there needs to be a base in order for the freedom to be. So if I'm feeling that security and I'm ready to fly and you're not, then it's not going to work. And so I really needed to harness that patience within me. And so I'm happy and proud of myself that I managed to do that. And it came from many things, and this is a longer conversation, but moving from maybe a scarcity mindset to abundance mindset, and not saying like, oh, I need this now. No, we have our whole life ahead of us, and if we build this if we slow down, we take a few steps back and build the foundation stronger, then we can fly higher. And so that's that. And for you, it's really, the courage that you've shown and the growth, both of us, but especially I know how hard it was. And we even recorded an episode a few months ago about coming out, and you even wrote a post like a year ago about coming out, but it didn't feel right yet. And who knows, maybe we won't air this episode, we'll see, but it feels right. I know how it feels within me. Like, it wouldn't feel right if we just put it out there and then there was this backlash that was too hurtful because you didn't build that foundation within yourself. So you also have that foundation to kind of be more free. And that leads me to what you have written down in your notes. The one word is authenticity. And it connects to both things that you were saying within the relationship and also with others. That's the thing about being authentic with each other, that yes, I can hide many sides of myself. I cannot share this part of me. Someone who is homosexual can act as if they're, happily married with a woman, or a woman with a man. But deep inside, they're not being authentic with the ones around them. So their parents, their family, they love them for who they believe they are, but they know that it's a lie. They're not truly loving them for who they truly are. And that's the thing with being authentic. Some people might not love us, they might not, but the people who do love us, that it's real. I know that it's real because they see all sides of me, and I strive to show more and more of that, whether it's here, whether it's with friends, in one-on-one conversations with you, or on social media, because that's who I am, and hiding parts of myself just doesn't feel right. I feel parts of me feel caged, and that brings me to the authenticity within the relationship that this brought. Like, speaking the fact that I have a desire towards someone else, or that you have a desire towards someone else, or anything, that you want to leave the lifestyle that you're living, you want to go and travel the world, and I want to stay, then hiding that from one another creates separation, right, and distance. And the fact that we start sharing these things with each other, it doesn't mean we have to act on them. That's a choice, but at least I can share, this is who I am, this is parts of me. And I feel that the more we allowed space for those parts of us, the more we became more authentic in that aspect of our relationship and in many other aspects. And that drove more intimacy and more closeness. Whereas it's counterintuitive, because you think that the more you go out and you're with more people, or exploring outside, then that brings distance. There were moments, but the more we relate about it consciously, and we are present with what's happening, and we are listening to each other, then it brings this really raw, vulnerable intimacy and closeness.
Yeah. And I just want to say on that note that I'm so grateful to the friends we had in this process, because it was so healing for me to feel that I'm accepted with the unconventional personality that I'm bringing, that I have space to bring all these aspects of me, and I'm being loved and supported by my friends. It was such a healing journey for me to be out there exploring all of this and not feeling judged even for a minute. And even like, okay, we had our friends in India, we were part of a community that was very open-minded, and many people that are living a lifestyle that is very different to what I knew in Israel. But I also felt the same from my friends in Israel, the ones I was sharing with. Even though they had a very different lifestyle than me, I felt like their best interest is for me to be happy and feel good. And that felt so good. And so I just kind of want to point that out and be grateful for that, because I think that's another aspect of the podcast, of sharing a different lifestyle that is completely different. It's out of the box in many ways. It's in another box in another way. Like when we're around people like us, we don't feel like we did anything unique or special or unconventional. But at the same time, yeah, there is something really comforting about finding your place and feeling like the way you're choosing to express yourself is accepted, and not being like pointed at and restricted. So I'm really grateful for that. And that's, again, an offering to anyone who's listening, wherever you are. Is it doesn't matter how you live your life. It's a matter of how comfortable you feel in this lifestyle, and making sure that you're doing it from a place of alignment, of connection to your lifestyle, and not because you were told that this is what you're supposed to do.
Yes, totally. I think I'll just say that just to strengthen everyone in those, just to allow yourselves that legitimacy, because the thoughts are there, the thoughts come, but the legitimacy to those thoughts around anything. It could be around relationship, it could be around open relating, it could be about homosexuality, and it can be about wanting something that you don't have currently, a certain car that you don't have the money for and feeling guilty. But just for a moment, breathing into it and allowing it, and trying not to judge those thoughts and those desires and those needs. It doesn't mean you have to act on them. You can decide what to do, but first allowing for that authentic voice to come up and speak. Whether you share it with others, that's your choice. You don't have to in order to be authentic, but first be authentic with yourselves. And that's something that I want to be a giveaway from this episode. And yes, we didn't get into the juicy details, but that's fine. We have all of our life, and I just want to allow space. I know that you asked, and you had your boundaries, but to raise a healthy conversation, if anyone does want, or if there are specific questions or areas that you are curious about this topic or other topics we've spoken about, to kind of help point us so that we can address them. And yeah, thank you. And I just want to lehokir, to
give
gratitude, but to you for the courage, and I'm excited for this moment where we can come out of the closet.
Yeah.